If your hair isn't straightened, it isn't done. That is the Eurocentric ideology that has caused years of discrimination towards Black people in the workplace and educational institutions. Black people are refused employment, fired, and even publicly humiliated because of their texture and their hairstyle choice. Now, there are 14 states who have passed the Crown Act. So with 14 states passing the Crown Act and a so-called increased tolerance with ethnic hair, this raises the question, is natural hair still an issue in the workplace? If you want to know, like I want to know, let's get into the video. So as some of you all may know, I returned natural back in 2010, and like I stated before in one of my previous videos, I had no rhyme, well, I had a reason, but it wasn't because of the movement. It was just because I got tired of relaxing my hair, and I wasn't even wearing my hair out a lot around that time because I was getting a lot of sew-ins. So that's why I returned natural. But prior to that, I had a relaxer, and I believe my first relaxer was when I was in the 1st grade. So pretty much my whole childhood, a relaxer was in my head. So that's all I knew. So I must say, now granted, that wasn't my choice as a child, but as I got older, I still kept it because that's what I thought you did as a Black girl. You have relaxed hair. And in my younger adulthood, before I returned natural, once I started getting in the workforce, I will say I was guilty of conforming, because, and not even realizing I was conforming at that time. I didn't really come to this conclusion until later on in life, but I was conforming because anytime I went to a job interview, I never wore my hair in any style that was be deemed ethnic, whether it was braids or whether it was, you know how we used to do, we used to have like 5 styles in one with the twist over here, bevels, whatever it is. I never wear those styles. I always wore my hair straight down, pressed, and that's it. Pressed, curl, that's it. If I didn't have a press, I would just wear a nice slick ponytail or something like that. So I will say I'm guilty of conforming. And then as soon as that interview was over, now I did like my press, and sometimes I missed it, but to actually do it because of an interview, because I felt like it would give me a better chance if I wore my hair in that way. And I think back and I'm like, oh wow, I was really like, I was just like everybody else. And really, when you think about it, how we wear our hair has nothing to do, it's so irrelevant to our actual competencies. And it's sad that we had to be conditioned to believe that, oh, when you get this job, you need to make sure your hair's straightened. Don't wear your kinky hair. Don't wear these type of hairstyles. Don't wear no braids. Don't wear no locks or anything like that, because you want to make sure that you feel like you could fit in with the culture of the company. And the thing about it, you do it because you don't know, you want the job. And discrimination is very hard to prove. So even if you went in with a style that was ethnic and you didn't get the job, it might make you second guess yourself if you didn't get the job because of your hair, because how do you prove it? How do you prove it? So we're really gonna get into talking about that at this video, but before we get into it, I would like to remind you all to like and share this video, and please be sure to subscribe. All right, so hair discrimination, it's nothing new. It dates as far back as the 1700s. So back in Louisiana, there was a Spanish governor who eventually passed a law for the Creole women to cover their hair it was called the Tignon law. Now, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Tignon, it was a scarf. So they were required to wear a scarf. And the reason this colonizer wanted these women to wear a scarf it was more specifically to the mixed race Creole women, whether you were enslaved or whether you were free, but all of them had to do it because it became law. But the reason he wanted them to wear these chignons was basically because he didn't want them competing with these white women. So these white colonizers that were in Louisiana started looking at these Creole women and seeing how they were fixing their hair. Their hair was nice and curly. They had little jewels in it and different kind of flowers. They were making themselves look good. And basically the colonizers start looking at them, and the Spanish governor was like, we can't have that. We can't have these women thinking that they on the same level as these white women. Whether they're enslaved or free, you need to wear this scarf and cover your hair. So as creative as us black folks are, what they did was they wore the scarves, but guess what? They wore beautiful scarves. They had all kind of fabrics. They put the jewels, instead of putting the jewels in their hair, this time they put the jewels on the scarves. They put flowers. They decorated it. And although this was something that was put into place to try to diminish their beauty and minimize them, to make them feel less than, of course they turned lemons into lemonade, and it became a statement. So actually wearing a scarf just became a thing. So it was not something, so they didn't shun away from it. They just made it theirs and made it work for them. And that's something that you can see a lot in our culture today, and how we wear scarves. You know, that's why we shouldn't, you know, talk about people. Let them wear their hair how they choose, because there's backgrounds to a lot of things that we as black people do. And reading about that, it was very intriguing and interesting, because the scarves became like symbolic to resistance and pride and a celebration of their culture. So women, you know, wear your scarves, doll it up, dress it up, and make yourself look nice. It can work. It worked for them. It can work for you. Don't let nobody tell you not to wear your scarf. So let's get into the first wave of the natural hair movement, which came in the 1960s. And this era was called the Black is Beautiful. And it was just to let black men and women know that your kinky hair and your African features, they are beautiful and they are admirable. This is around the time also James Brown was singing "I'm Black and I'm Proud," and Marcus Garvey was letting black women know, hey, you don't have to uphold these Eurocentric standards. When you do that and you copy these white women, you're denigrating your natural beauty as a black woman. And so wearing afros became a thing, and afros actually was like a symbolic to solidarity within the black community, because there was a lot they were fighting for, you know, fighting for your freedom, fighting to be able to, you know, even just go places and drink some water. So it was a lot going on around that time. And so it just became somewhat of a rebellion, not wanting to be considered less than anymore. So then you have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. But the thing about this law is that it left it up to the courts to decide what constitutes as racial discrimination. Go figure, right? So a little over a decade later, you have Beverly Jean Jenkins, this was in 1976, who sued her employer. They went by Blue Cross Mutual Hospital Insurance back then, and she was told that she could never represent that company with her afro. So she filed a lawsuit, a civil rights lawsuit for discrimination based on for racial discrimination, and the U.S. Courts of Appeals did uphold the race discrimination lawsuit against the employer for bias against afros. So basically, she was able to win that because an afro is how our hair grows. Our hair defies gravity. So you can't discriminate against someone for how they naturally are. However, federal courts were trying to persist that hair should be excluded because they look at it as a characteristic that can be changed. But the thing about it, the only way you change your afro is through manipulation, and you should not be forced to manipulate your hair if you choose not to. So towards the late 70s and the 80s and the 90s, Black people started to assimilate a lot more. They started to copy and uphold the Eurocentric standard. That's when you start seeing relaxers become a lot more prevalent. Like I said, I had a relaxer since I was in the first grade, and that was in the early 90s. So it was just something that became the norm for us. I don't know, the reason could be just so to maintain your hair easier. It could have been, and sometimes just to blend into society. So there's many different reasons for each person of why they decided to assimilate. So in the 80s, there were also some lawsuits that were filed because of hair discrimination. Now this is when things get tricky, because these situations weren't about afros, because people wasn't really wearing afros in the 80s like that, but they start wearing braids, cornrows, and things like that, and locking their hair. So in 1981, Renee Rogers, she took American Airlines to court because the company demanded that she not wear her braids. And the thing about that case is that the court sided with American Airlines, and they did so because they said that braids were not an immutable racial characteristics, unlike an afro. So basically she lost because braids are a style. I guess they looked at it as, well, you don't have to have braids. You can take out those braids now. If you want to wear your afro, that's fine, because that's just how your hair grows out your scalp. But you cannot wear your ethnic hairstyles. So she lost that one, and because of that one, years later, a few years later, actually in 1987, Cheryl Tatum, she had resigned from the Hyatt Regency because they wanted her to take her cornrows out, and she wasn't having it. So they utilized that case in 1981 and that reasoning of braids not being immutable to win that case. So then you have in which is much more recent, in 2018, a young girl from Christ the King Elementary School in Terrytown, Louisiana, she was sent home because of her braided hairstyle. Now the school states that she could wear braids, but it has to be braids with her hair. You couldn't have extensions or anything like that. So she was sent home. And then in 2018, there was a Black high school male student who was forced to choose to cut his locks off or to forfeit the wrestling match. Now this situation was recorded, and it's just, it really was disgusting. Ultimately he decided to cut them, and it was recorded. So I'm gonna let you all take a look at this, and I'm gonna come back and talk to you in a minute.
Hair-based discrimination is happening in schools too. In 2018, a referee in New Jersey forced Andrew Johnson, a Black high school student, to cut off his locks before competing in a wrestling match. And last year in Texas, another Black student, DeAndre Arnold, was suspended and told he could not walk in his high school graduation because his locks were too long.
We do see, this elevation, this privileging of straightened hairstyles as good hair.
Now, that was just really sad, and it really was uncalled for, and it really sucks that a lot of these things like that was only a few years ago. Like, hair discrimination is just not something of the past. As much as we like to think we move forward, it's still around. And like I said, this was something very recent within the past few years, and it just shouldn't be like this. It really shouldn't. So let's get into a case from 2010 where Chastity Jones, she was offered and accepted a job offer at Catastrophe Management Solutions as a customer service representative. However, upon accepting the offer, they wanted her to cut off her locks, and she refused, of course, as she should, and basically they rescinded the offer. So the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, they filed a suit on Jones's behalf in 2013, but they lost. So basically, once again, the case was lost because the court said that this was not based off race, because her locks, they're changeable. She can change her locks. She could take them. She don't have to have them. They're basically saying because her hair doesn't grow that way. So pretty much the only thing that was safe under the Civil Rights Act law was an afro. That's pretty much it. Like you couldn't, anything added to your hair, no, it was not protected. And this is why the law was pretty much a little flawed. However, the EEOC did argue that race is a social construct and that it isn't strictly limited to immutable characteristics such as the afro. Like how you wear your hair culturally is something that can be specific to race. Although anyone can do it, there are just things that we do culturally within our community. So the NAACP did file a subsequent lawsuit. However, their case was rejected as well. Many of the discrimination issues regarding natural hair, ethnic hairstyles, or whatever it may be, are not just from these private companies. There have been issues as well regarding the military and how men and women wear their hair in braids and different hairstyles. So I want you all to take a look at a clip of this young lady and her experience. Check it out.
January 5th, in the year of our Lord 2017, we are now allowed to wear locks in uniform.
Retired Staff Sergeant Chauncey Logan spent 20 years in the Army. Halfway through her service, she decided to put her hair in locks because it was easier to maintain. That style, however, violated the military's grooming policy, which was particularly difficult for Black personnel.
I was ordered to cut my locks, and I refused that order. So I ended up being tried under UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Was found guilty of refusing that order, and the punishment was to be reduced in rank and to be separated from the military for refusing to cut my hair. Now, that didn't happen.
What changed? During the trial, she made a minor change to her hairstyle. It allowed Logan to keep her job and rank.
My hair like this was wrong, but doing this, twisting two of them together, this was determined to be within regulation. So this is what I did all over my hair.
In 2017, the Army removed its ban on locks, but Logan still remembers how the scrutiny made her feel.
That is the worst experience I've had of my 20-year career. I was in the Iraq invasion, 2003, deployment, Afghanistan. We're trained to prepare for war. Nothing could prepare me for this.
I really think that it is sad that someone can fight for this country, really put their life on the line, and you want to demote them and basically, bring them down because of a hairstyle that does not affect what it is that they do and the work that they put in. Now, however, the military has updated their grooming policies within the past few years. The Army has, the Navy, and the Air Force. The only one that has not updated anything as of yet that I could find was the Marines. Now, the Marines are a little different, so who knows? Maybe they'll update their policies. We'll see. In comes the 2010s, and this is the second wave of the natural hair movement. exactly around the time I went natural, as many people that I do know. And relaxers, the sales of relaxers declined significantly. Between 2011 and 2017, they declined about 31%. So a lot of these companies, they had to, you know, change their strategy. And if you notice, they start all of a sudden having these curl defining shampoos, conditioners, serums, and different things like that that supposedly cater to natural hair. So then in 2019, we have the Crown Act, which is an acronym for Create a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair. And this was actually created by women, Black women leaders, and it was sponsored and led by Los Angeles Senator Holly Mitchell, and she introduced it to California, and it was actually passed in California. So California is the first state to actually pass this law, and New York became second with New York's Assemblywoman Tremaine Wright working along with them. So New York was second in line, and they passed the law as well. So this law was to legally protect Black students and employees, to protect their hair and how we wear our hair. So I'm gonna read a little bit of what it consists of, and I'm also going to leave the link for the Crown Act, the website that it's on, and so that you all can look into it. So it states that the history of our nation is riddled with laws and societal norms that equated Blackness and the associated physical traits. For an example, dark skin, kinky, and curly hair to a badge of inferiority, sometimes subject to separate and unequal treatment. This idea also permeated societal understanding of professionalism. Professionalism was and still is closely linked to European features and mannerisms, which entails that those who do not naturally fall into Eurocentric norms must alter their appearances, sometimes drastically and permanently, in order to be deemed professional. Despite the great strides of American society and laws have been made to reverse the racist ideology that black traits are inferior. Hair remains a rampant source of racial discrimination with serious economic and health consequences, especially for Black individuals. Workplace dress code and grooming policies that prohibit natural hair, including afros, braids, twists, and locks, have a disparate impact on Black individuals, as these policies are more likely to deter Black applicants and burden or punish Black employees than any other group. So that's a little part of what is in the Crown Act. I will also leave that link if you want to look more into that. So the Crown Act, see, this is why it's very important for Black people to be in leadership positions, because this is how we get things done. Entrepreneurship is great, as it's something that I'm trying to pursue myself, but the fact of the matter is everyone's not going to be an entrepreneur. So we really need to push people who are able to level up within their companies and get to a corporate level to where they can actually be decision makers, politicians, good politicians, and really try to get us in those positions so that things like this can be passed. As of right now, there are only 14 states who have signed and passed this law, and there are counties and cities throughout the country. I can't remember the exact number, but it is on a website. But 14, only 14. And it has not been passed in my state, in the state of Georgia, and nor in my city. So on the website, it'll show you how to get in contact with the senator and everything like that. So with that being said, is hair discrimination still an issue? Yes, yes. A lot of these things I just told you are very recent, and it has like within the past few years, and I'm pretty sure there are more situations that are happening. They're just not on social media, or we just, like I said before, like it's very hard to prove any type of discrimination. So imagine trying to prove discrimination for how you wear your hair. And there are women, black women and men who are out still today who believe that, you know, I still need to straighten my hair, and I still need to have a low fade and things like that in order to succeed. And there's a generation that, you know, still goes by that, but as we see now, we're blossoming, and we're not going for that anymore, because we should be able to look how we look naturally in our natural hair state, however we decide to style it, because that is professional. We are professional. How we look is beautiful. So I really feel like this will always be an issue until black people are secure as a whole with wearing their hair and not feeling hesitant on, ooh, should I straighten my hair? You know, as long as we still feel that, oh, I don't know, and as long as a lot of these situations keep happening where athletes have to cut their hair and things like that, just because of how it looks, you know, if it's not in the way and it's not messing up the performance and it's not harming anyone, then the hair should just be left alone. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. Let me know what you all think. Have you all ever been discriminated or feel that you've been discriminated against because of how you wore your hair? And has the Crown Act been passed in your state or your county or city? Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on hair discrimination in the workplace and educational institution. And as always, be beautiful, be black, be you, always.